On a list of improbable sequels that I never thought would exist, I think a Gladiator II would be near the top of it. Is this a movie that needs to exist? No. Is this movie historically accurate? Probably not. Does it have problems? Absolutely. But the real question is, was I entertained? Because that is, after all, why we are here. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Years after the death of Maximus, a gladiator with rage in his heart, and with the future of the Empire at stake, looks to the past to find the strength and honor needed to return the glory of Rome to its people. Now, I know that Ridley Scott gets a lot of criticism for some of the films he's made in the later stages of his career. And you know what? Some of that criticism is absolutely warranted. But at the end of the day, I'm still very thankful for everything that Ridley Scott has contributed to the art form of cinema. I'm also thankful that he still displays the same passion for storytelling that some people in modern Hollywood clearly do not have. He gets a lot of praise for movies like Alien and Blade Runner for obvious reasons. But one could argue that the original Gladiator is just as good, if not better, than both of those movies. I am actually of the opinion that the original Gladiator is a perfect film. And when it comes to making sequels to perfect films, that's going to be a tall task for any director, even one as legendary as Ridley Scott.
That makes sense.
It should be noted that Gladiator II has been the subject of much controversy even before its release. Whether it's people criticizing the song choices in the trailer, or whether or not the characters and events depicted in the film are historically accurate. From my perspective, none of that mattered. Because I'm going to see a Gladiator film, not to get a history lesson, but to be entertained. My only hope going into it is that the sequel didn't do anything to undermine the legacy of the original film. I think the first thing that jumped out to me about Gladiator II is that it is very clearly considerably less sophisticated than the original. Now, depending on who you are and what you are looking for, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I think Gladiator II is very intentionally a much more over-the-top film than its predecessor. I know a lot has been said already about the flooded Colosseum scene where gladiators are taking on sharks. Does that sound like a cheesy sci-fi movie concept? Yes. And was it ridiculous when I was watching it? Absolutely. But that doesn't negate the fact that it was an absolute blast to watch unfold.
I like it a lot.
In fact, I would say that one of the movie's biggest strengths is the fight and battle sequences. Not only are they brutal in some instances, the spectacle of it all is ramped up to 100. It's actually done in a way that makes it a little bit hard to believe that this is in the same continuity with the more intellectual first film, but I think in the name of entertainment, most of it does work, even if I could have done with a lot less CGI. I think the film also takes a very modern approach to the way that it does callbacks to the original film that are meant to inspire a nostalgic reaction. And I felt like some of the callbacks do work, and a lot of them were actually a bit too on the nose. I think the musical cues got me more than anything I was seeing or hearing in the dialogue. And I think that's a testament to Hans Zimmer's flawless and timeless score. And it wasn't overused, much to my surprise, so when you do hear it, it feels more special and you can't help but get goosebumps.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
On the downside of that, some of the referencing to the first movie did result in the early stages of this film hitting a lot of very familiar story beats. For that reason, this is one of the rare occasions where I actually enjoyed the payoff more than I did the setup. It felt like they were kind of playing it safe early on in the film until they got to the point where they could tell the story that they actually wanted to tell. Denzel Washington has already received a lot of praise for his scene-stealing performance. For me, it wasn't so much that the performance itself blew me away. I think it had more to do with the fact that we are seeing Denzel play a type of character that we are not accustomed to seeing him play. He was just a bit more eccentric and flamboyant than your typical Denzel performance. And I think the path that his character takes in the film is easily one of the more interesting parts of it. Yes, Pedro Pascal is in this movie, and I've been critical of the way that Hollywood tends to shoehorn him into a lot of movies. But much to my surprise, his character was another interesting aspect to this film that I wasn't expecting. I went in based on the trailers, thinking that he would be this one-note, typical military general villain character. But as his story unfolds, it is revealed that there is a bit more to him than that. And I do think that the little bit of backstory we get for him, as well as the reveal of his motivations throughout the film, make him a very memorable addition to this story. As far as Paul Mescal goes, listen, he obviously has very enormous shoes to fill as he tries to follow up Russell Crowe in the lead role. And if I'm being honest, Paul doesn't have anywhere near the screen presence that Russell had in the original film. And because of that, especially early in the film, there were moments where I felt like he was miscast. I think it took a while for me to get used to the idea that his character isn't supposed to be a Maximus clone, because I think the film was kind of setting him up to be just that. But as things are revealed and as the conflict unfolds, I think Paul kind of settles into the role. And by the end of it, I felt very differently, and I felt like he did a decent job with the material he was given. It should also be noted that the spirit of Maximus looms large over this film. At first I was like, wait, nothing really changed after his death. Rome still sucks, so does that undermine his death and make it less significant? But then I thought about how history tells us that if you remove one bad weed, that two more will sprout up in its place. And the words and actions of Maximus very much still inspire events in this film. So all things considered, I felt like it was still being respectful and I was okay with it. Listen, Gladiator II has its issues. It is clunky and messy in its delivery at times. It's unapologetically over the top with some of its characters and spectacle. But when it comes right down to it, I didn't hate myself while watching it. It very much felt like Ridley Scott went into this movie with the intention to not try to outdo the original, which is impossible, but instead he chose to approach the material from a slightly different, more popcorn movie perspective. So despite its obvious flaws, I had a decent time with Gladiator II. I think for that reason, it is the very definition of a guilty pleasure, and that's why I'm going to give it the Cathouse.
Saved by kitty litter.
Y'all be cool. Right on.